Thank you all again for having me. When I was asked to come here, I was a little reluctant, I won't lie. I've never really done anything like this, but I've always been really public with my faith and made it something that, I didn't want to hide from anyone. I'll start off with this verse. And actually, it was something last year before we played Florida. I went to our team chaplain's office, and I just kind of told him, I'm nervous. I don't know if I can do this, things like that. And he just kind of looked at me and smiled and said, well, have you looked in the Bible for answers? And I said, no, sir. I've been watching a lot of film trying to, make sure I got the football part down. And he read me, I lie down and sleep. I wake up again because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear though tens of thousands assail me on every side. And, that's something instantly whenever my initial reaction was, fear, getting up in front of a lot of people speaking, that came directly straight back to me. And I think that's just an interesting way to kind of start off, just my testimony. So like he said, my parents, Jeff and Teresa, I grew up in Garrett County, Kentucky, so kind of far away from here. On a lake, Harrington Lake. Some of you all have probably been before, but honestly, my testimony kind of differs in the fact that a lot of testimonies are good because people go through a lot of struggles in life and have these hard times that, they prevail out of and find God again, but mine's quite the opposite, to be honest with you. I won't lie to you and say that I've had this super hard life where, things have been going wrong at home. My parents have always been very good to me and my brother, and we've had very little issues when it comes to things like that. I went to a private Christian school up until sophomore year of high school, but I still would think that on the surface it may seem like there's not a lot of things that could make you waver in faith in situations like that, but I'm sure as a lot of people know here, surely there is, and that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So growing up, I started playing football when I was 3 years old. My dad played in college, and most of my family played, so it was kind of just I was the next man up to play. My brother was already playing. He's 3 years older than me, so I started at 3 and played up with the 5-year-olds. My dad will tell you I was a star quarterback, but my mom will tell you that I laid on the ground and did not want to play football. So but anyways, as things progressed, I ended up I was a running back, believe it or not. So I was wanted to touch the ball, wanted to score touchdowns, things like that. And that honestly went all the way up until about 8th grade. I was still playing running back, having the time of my life. I was at LCA, same group of friends I'd played with, up and through my whole life. And then I remember one night going home from practice. Me and my brother were in the back of my dad's truck, and I was just sitting there thinking about how much, I love football, and I love the sport, and I love the things that it's taught me, and I love the friends it's brought me. And I was like, I want to do this for the rest of my life, or as long as I can do it. And that's kind of when the dream was born of just, this is something that I want to take and try to do as long as I can, God willing. So that's when the dream was kind of born. And then going into freshman year, my world got all shook up. I got moved from running back to defensive line, and I was on it. It sounds funny to mess around about, but I was really upset. I'd been, visualizing since, like for a year or two, just being in college, scoring touchdowns at Kentucky, playing running back. And I was like, this isn't right. The coaches should not do this to me. And that was honestly, when I was, preparing for this, that was the first time I could really remember. And I feel like a lot of people have a moment like this where I was like, why would God do this to me? Why would God let them, throw off my dream and ruin my dream that I had thought about for so long, and stuff like that. So I go and I play D-line, and then after my freshman year, I ended up transferring to Frederick Douglass, which was a new public school in Lexington, and I got switched to O-line. And this is when I was really like, okay, D-line is different, but O-line, like, I'm going to be blocking for the guy that I wanted to be now, and it was hard. It was really hard making that adjustment, but, I did it, and I kind of met it head on, and before I really even had time to think about it, feeling sorry for myself, things like that, it was, what he was talking about, I started receiving these scholarship offers. And I just remember, whenever I went to Kentucky and got that first scholarship offer, I was like, man, I really did it. But, am I happy? I was ecstatic that I had achieved what I'd been working for so long. But it honestly felt like for a little bit that, what now? I had done what I wanted to do, and this was my goal. And I was going into my junior year of high school, and I was like, what is the point of me being in high school? I can't get better to the point where the end goal, which would be the NFL, in high school. And looking back on it, I think it's fair to say that was a really poor attitude to have. And I would honestly say I had that attitude for most of my junior year of high school. And then our head coach left. He got a job in college. And my offensive line coach got promoted to the head coach at my high school. And I remember I went into his office, and I just kind of broke down. And I told him, I was like, I love football, but I just feel like I just don't want to be here. I don't know what I'm doing. Things like that, where it was just another moment where I was like, there was so much pressure on me to, do things, and it kind of just all happened so fast where I never really even had a time to sit back and enjoy reaching, I guess, part one of my goal. And I told him that I wasn't sure if I even wanted to play in college. And I haven't even told my parents this, but I told him that I wasn't even sure if I wanted to play in college because I didn't think I could do it, and I didn't think I was good enough to do it. And he sat me down, and we just kind of went back and watched games. And he had coached at Lafayette when some Landon Young, who played at Kentucky, and a couple other guys that had played in college went there. And he showed me, we watched their games and we watched mine. And he was like, now watch Jedrick Willis, who played at Alabama. He was like, he did this in high school, and look at him now at Alabama, and he's doing it. Why do you think you can't? And that was kind of like an epiphany to me of, whenever you put all your self-worth into something, it can quickly be broken down through one poor performance. And that's kind of when I really steered back to God. I hadn't necessarily strayed away, but I wasn't nearly as strong as I was before I had reached my goal. I think when we reach goals in life, it can kind of pull you away from the things that helped you get there a lot of the time. And that was surely something that I got back to my senior year when I really fell back into the Lord. So my senior year goes on. I win. We lose in the state semifinals, which was tough. But then, it's kind of, I was graduating a semester early to get to college. So it was kind of football season ends. I take those finals, and then, boom, I'm already in college. So in my head, I surely wouldn't have won all these awards and done all these great things in high school if I wasn't going to play my first year in college. I was for sure in my head that, all these other people didn't start as a true freshman, but, I'm going to. I'm different. And I was wrong. I got to college, and I realized, these guys I was 18 at the time. I was like, these guys are 22. They have, some guys have kids and families to feed, and it's just it's a different world. It really is. But, you get humbled a lot in that first year. And even now when I see freshmen come in and just the difference from after a few weeks of practice, how much more humble they are and more willing to take coaching and listen to things older guys have to say. But yeah, anyways, so I go through that practice, and I slowly realized that I'm not going to play. And it was super hard for me to accept, just for the fact that, like I said, I had so much pressure on me in the football realm of things, where it was like, I have to start or I failed. Like, my parents are going to be disappointed in me. My brother's going to be disappointed in me. Everybody is, asking me for tickets for the games, and I'm like, I'm not even going to be playing. Why do you want to come? Because I never dealt with it, and it was just something that I hadn't really thought about until the season had started, I guess. And I remember my mom randomly I get home from practice one day, and my mom was randomly in the parking lot of my dorm. And I got out of my car, and she was standing there, and I just looked at her and started bawling. And I was like, everybody's going to be so disappointed in me, all this stuff. And she again, we had a long conversation with a lot of stuff, but she again, pointed me back to God. And that's when I realized, like, throughout my whole life, I had been using God as this sort of backboard, where it was like I would do these great things that I always wanted to do, using God to get there. And then once I got there, I would kind of, well, now I'm here, I can relax, and I don't need to, do all this extra stuff. I can kind of just hang out. And then whenever I would have that fall from, doing that, I would use God to kind of bounce off of and try to get back to where I was. And when I realized that, going into my second year at UK, it was this huge wake-up call where, I was like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be the guy that only prays when he needs something. I don't want to be the guy who only reads his Bible when he's having a hard time or needs something from God. I don't want to be a beggar to God. I want to be someone that's there with God through the good times and the bad times. So going into that second year, I started going to FCA. I started going to Bible studies at the facility that they were having that originally I was like, oh, we just got to have practice. I'm too tired to do that. I don't need to do that. I need to go home and rest so I can be the best I can at practice. But I can honestly say just things I learned in that time at FCA, at UK, and the Bible studies led by players was just like, okay, other people have dealt with the same thing I'm dealing with. I think it's really easy to fall into, a victim's mindset when you're going through hard things, that I'm the only one going through this. No one will understand me. There's no point to talk about it to anyone because they're not going to get it. And I think FCA really opened my eyes to that, to understand that, these people have went through the same things I have. This is how they fixed it. And I could also shed light to people like those freshmen who were coming in. This is what happened to me, and this is how I fixed it, to help them not have to go through some of the things that the other guys had to go through. So that was a really important stepping stone for me. And I feel like looking back on everything that's happened to me up until this point, I don't think that if my parents had put me in church when I was little, that I would have honestly been able to make the right decisions that I made and do the things that I've done. Because looking back, just going back into my story, whenever they switched me to D-line, I could have easily quit football and been like, well, they didn't do what I wanted to do, I'm done. But no, I trusted God because I had that upbringing in church and known that there's a plan with everything that happens. And I trusted God there. And then whenever they moved me to O-line and I had to move schools, I trusted God then. And then even up until, this year I got moved to center, and it was hard. And I trusted God then, I trusted God then too. And that was really the point I wanted to get across, that it's hard to look at things in our views when some things happen and understand why it's happening. But the biggest thing for me was just understanding that God has a full roadmap of your life. And when you look back on things, it's a lot easier to understand why stuff happened the way it did. So that's really honestly all I have. I appreciate you all listening, and thank you all.